No matter how you move, get it done. No matter how you move, get it done. No matter how you move, get it done. No matter how you move, get it done.
We as fans gotta stop holding the story hostage. One of the things that I wanted to bring to you guys today with this effing rant is something that, I ain't gonna lie, even I myself have been guilty of in the past, but it's definitely a very big problem and affects stories in a major way. Now, I absolutely applaud when a studio, an author, anybody that is creating a story actually maybe takes a little bit into consideration of what the fans feel. Like, for example, if a story is going in a massive nosedive and it's just become absolutely unbearable, terrible, just a really bad story, then it's definitely a good idea to maybe take a little bit of insight into what the fans feel, how the fans' perspective is on the narrative, what's going on with the characters, the world building, all of that good stuff. Definitely listening to the fans is important there. In fact, even when things are good, taking into consideration how fans feel about certain characters is at the very least a good idea to just get a pulse of how the fans feel about things. But that doesn't always mean that it should necessarily take a big precedence into where the story is going to go, and ultimately the biggest one. This one is the biggest one that really gets me upset, and why I decided to make this rant video is allowing the fans to pigeonhole you and put you in a box to the point where you feel like I have to abide by what the fans say, if not it's game over. And that has cost a lot of series a lot of, you could argue, respect, a lot of very good points, a lot of good places that the story could have gone, but ultimately they can't. Now, let's take a big example right here. One of the big things when it comes to a lot of shonen manga and anime is the fact that the stories can't go certain routes because ultimately the fans can't handle it, and they've shown time and time again that they won't handle it, that they'll actually lash out. I will give you a prime example of what I'm referring to right now. When it comes to Bleach, in the 1,000-Year Blood War, there is a battle with Byakuya Kuchiki, and I remember this like it was yesterday. During the Bleach manga's run, one of the big things was there was a point where Byakuya Kuchiki was seemingly going to die. His Zanpakuto shattered, and ultimately it looked as though Tite Kubo was getting ready to off the character. It was curtains for him, and there was a massive, gigantic backlash to Tite Kubo and Bleach from the fandom because they didn't want to see their favorite character die. And ultimately, what did that lead to? It led to Tite Kubo making the character survive and bringing him back. And that's just one of many examples of that shonen manga. The reason why a lot of characters are usually safe and there's plot armor, so to speak, is the fact that the fans will ultimately combat certain subjects and certain routes that the author can take with backlash and even possibly abandoning the series. And at the end of the day, no matter how much you want to say it's all about the art, there is a business side to things. Unless you're like an author that you just publishing your stuff on your website and you don't care whether it goes big or not, and ultimately you're 100% tunnel vision into your idea and your vision of how everything is going to go, and you don't really have any regard towards the fans. Oftentimes, especially when it comes to like series that are under big publications like Shueisha, Kodansha, Shogakukan, the fans reign supreme when it comes to why characters are usually safe and incapable of dying. Oftentimes in a lot of these shonen series, the characters that they usually can or they're risky enough to kill off are characters either from flashbacks that, hey, they're already dead, you know they're already dead, so it doesn't matter, you don't get it emotionally attached, you better not, because they were already known to be dead, so it doesn't really matter, and you know that going up front, so it doesn't feel like the author is playing with your emotions, because again, it kind of almost feels like to a certain degree, the audience and a lot of times the fandom can't accept certain things emotionally, that it's too impactful for them. And then oftentimes when they do kill off characters, it's either characters that have been relegated to not that important anymore, a la in Naruto Shippuden, spoiler alert, even though who hasn't watched Naruto Shippuden and figured out by now who dies and whatnot. Character like Neji that at one point, early Naruto, pretty freaking important. Part of the Konoha 11 Rookie 9. He was very prominent. He had a big character plot with his whole thing with the Hyuga and Destiny and his connection to Hinata. However, for hundreds upon hundreds of chapters, he was relegated to absolutely nothing. And then that kind of gave Kishimoto the okay to, I can kill this dude off. And then other characters in the series as well, like, hey, somebody from the older generation or somebody that's been a villain and done horrendous things. Like, there's, I guess, a certain regard to where if a character has done things that that are irredeemable 100%, then that also gives them the okay, because then in the audience's eyes, the audience will have no choice but to accept, like, hey, how can I morally stand by feeling bad about a character dying if they've done so many horrendous atrocities? So there are certain ways that the author has to go about in order to even kill characters, because again, the audience be holding the story and holding the author hostage. Imagine going into a series like, prime example, Berserk. Imagine watching Berserk in the Golden Age arc and then flipping out and screaming and attacking the author once you get to the eclipse. Like, that is something that set that series on the map. Like, it was already very rich with deep concepts, philosophical takes, all sorts of great rich storytelling within it. But then when you get to the eclipse, that's what kind of blew it up to mainstream popularity, and why usually people say watch Berserk, the 97 anime, the Golden Age arc. Ultimately, once you get to the eclipse, you're going to be like, holy cow. And that's also where the story takes a complete turn from, it's like this medieval fantasy and there's sprinkles of supernatural elements, but ultimately it's still really like set in kind of a grounded reality, to oh my god, there's skeletons that are fighting and demons all over the place. It's crazy what the hell happened. It was almost as if Kentaro Miura kind of was not necessarily forced, but definitely probably pushed in the direction of, yeah, once stuff like that happens and it gets really dark and graphic and people are murdered, slaughtered, and all sorts of bad stuff happens, I gotta change this series up entirely. Like, you could argue that Berserk pre-Golden Age and post-Golden Age are damn near two different stories altogether. And again, I feel like a lot of that is due to the fact that the audiences oftentimes cannot accept things and again hold the story hostage. It even brings me back to, like, outside of just anime and manga, like the series Dexter. I'll never forget, from Showtime. It was about this serial killer. It was a live action show that he was, like, you know, very, very bad person. But even then, the network themselves didn't allow the creators to do what they wanted with the character, when it was to the point where it almost felt like, man, he's probably gonna die by the end of all this. The studio came in and said, no, you can't do that. Well, there was a couple of other reasons behind it, but ultimately, again, it's the fact that killing off characters is a very big concept behind it. While, yeah, oftentimes that's not the most important thing in the world, nevertheless, that still pushes the story forward. Half the time, character deaths and things of that nature that are very deep and, you know, just tragic, push things along. Like, imagine what Naruto would have been like, the character himself, had he not experienced the death of Jiraiya. That was something that pushed him and made him feel like, okay, I gotta man up. If Guts didn't go through the eclipse, he wouldn't have become the ultimate soldier and warrior that he went on to be. Luffy experiencing what happened at the end of Marineford with Ace put him on the track to ultimately becoming an even bigger warrior, and understanding that on my road to greatness, to being Pirate King, I am going to suffer losses. It's going to happen. But nevertheless, even a series like One Piece is held back. There's a controversy as I'm recording this video right now where fans are very upset because certain character deaths didn't seemingly go the way that people expected, and people are mad. But then again, if they didn't do that, oftentimes fans will come through and say, oh, how could you possibly do this? That's my favorite character. I'm dropping it. I'm never reading it again, and destroying the business aspects of things. So what I came to say is this: it is definitely okay to give your opinions. Criticisms is always valid. However, when you're coming from an emotional standpoint and trying to basically hold the story hostage and control the narrative due to your personal connections with characters, you're dead wrong. You're dead wrong, because even if you love a character, even if you admire a character, if the author feels that it'll push the story the way he's trying to go about it and in a positive direction, you gotta allow them to do what they want to do. This is why you never see, for example, in literature in general, the bad guy win. The bad guy almost never wins, because oftentimes people don't necessarily see themselves as bad, and when you're reflecting something via storytelling of like, hey, the good guy wins, it kind of is a reaffirmation for the reader that, okay, you know, I'm valid as a person. And just in general, that's why you don't get the bad guy winning, because audiences will be like, oh my god, that's terrible, how could you do that? Even though that kind of breaks the rules, and that's something that I would love to see. Like, imagine if a series like Naruto ended with, no, Madara won in the end, that's it. People would say it sucked, right? But at the same time, that's also redefining storytelling and just something daring and bold that oftentimes they don't really allow to be done. If Death Note ended with Light completely winning in the end, like he won a battle, he lost a war, and would have been a crazy story to say, yo, in the end, the bad guy main character took the W. Stop trying to control the author. Stop threatening the author whenever things don't go your way. Stop trying to manipulate things, because it's valid to have criticism. It's okay to want the story to go in certain directions, but when you're trying to control the author's pen by means of, hey, I'm gonna drop this story, that's when it's kind of like, come on, man, you're here for the ride. Yeah, criticize it all day and night, but there's a limit to where you gotta go with it, I guess. But I'm curious what you guys think. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where a story was going a certain regard, a character was killed off, and you went absolutely rampaging online, on Twitter, on YouTube comment section saying, oh my god, this is terrible? Like, imagine, oh my god, I'll never forget when Naruto, the big reveal of who was under the mask of Toby, and I've been talking about Naruto a lot, I always do that, it is what it is. People freaking hated it. Imagine if, like, the very next chapter, Kishimoto was like, no, it actually wasn't him, y'all hated it, yeah, I changed it. That would have been terrible. Love it or hate it, Kishimoto stood his ground on that, which is kind of cool. And shout out to the authors that don't allow the audiences to manipulate their pen. Do your thing, man. Don't let the audience control you. But it sucks because for the longest time and for the foreseeable future, that will always be a thing. The audience not being able to accept whether it be a character death, a character going in a different direction than they initially thought. Authors are kind of held in a cage and in a box. That's why it's always good to be kind of unpredictable with your storytelling. Make people think that you could go left, you could go right, you could go forward, back, to the side, to the corner. You never know where it's going to go, and then kind of audiences are forced to accept, well, this is a wild ride, a la something like Chainsaw Man. But that's all I have for this one. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. If you liked anything I had to say or enjoyed the video, drop me a like. I'd greatly appreciate it. And if you want more from me, make sure to subscribe. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram. Hit that bell to get all notifications. And if you want to follow any of my other social media, links are in the description below. I'm ForneverWorld, and as always, people, have an awesome day. And remember the golden rule: anime and manga for life, boy! Have an awesome day. Peace in, and let the author do what they want to do. Just saying, criticize it all you want, but don't take it to that next level of, oh, I'm dropping this, or, you know, I'm gonna threaten the author because I didn't get my way. Like, you're holding him hostage, and yeah, no. Have an awesome one. So just go.